Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sven Riesum, second warden. Unfortunately, Andre Boudreau is out of town and Martha had another engagement, so they are not going to be here today. So Mark, Keith, and I are ready to go. The agenda for today is very focused, and it is to discuss and act on National Grid easement for town beach property. Marianne, do you want to sort of take us through things that have been progressing since we last talked about this a few days ago?
Sure. So what's before you again this evening is an amendment to the easement that was signed by the town a little over a year ago. Is that not working? Yeah, no, it is. Someone broke the mic. So, I provided the council with a number of documents at the last meeting, included the amended easement, the financial spreadsheet, which shows how the numbers were arrived at, the specific market value, as well as the 7% rate and the $20 per square foot was what was negotiated last year. So the terms and condition of the cost associated with the easement is what was negotiated last year. At the last meeting, the council did ask me to provide a number of other documents for you, which have been provided, and they're also posted on ClockBase. Those documents include the actual appraisal by Valentine Appraisal, Newport Appraisal Group, regarding the appraisal for last year to come up with the terms and conditions. I've also provided the council with the actual easement for National Grid, the easement that was signed also for Ørsted, and also the discussion last time also spoke about the south parking lot specifically and the recent flooding regarding that parking lot. As I've stated to the council in my report some time ago, Ørsted had taken full responsibility for that parking lot and said that they would mitigate the drainage problems and restore the parking lot to the condition it was in prior to the construction started. The council did ask for a letter from Ørsted to state that, and they have. As I stated to the council in my report some time ago, that town engineer was heading out to Block Island the end of September, beginning of October. And during our last meeting, when we were discussing this, I did receive a letter from Jim Jeremiah that he is slated to come out here tomorrow. So tomorrow at 10 o'clock, Jim Jeremiah, our engineer, members from Ørsted, Sam, myself, will be meeting at the parking lot to discuss how best to remediate that or begin that discussion. And also the timeline associated with that remediation, which may take some time in light of the fact that National Grid does have some work to do, not so much in that parking lot, but in North Parking Lot and some of the construction work that they have. And I think that pretty much summarizes it, and I would entertain any questions from the council if they have any.
Actually, if I can, on one of them, and Brian Wilson from Ørsted is here, but I would like to, just for the public, on the one subject of the flooding of the south lot or the lack of percolation or whatever words we want to use for the moment, the town did receive a letter today from Mikkel Mielsen, or I don't know how to pronounce it, but let me just read it. Town beach parking lot. As per previous discussion, Ørsted is aware that there are drainage issues in the town beach parking lot that did not exist in the same magnitude prior to the cable retrofit project. Ørsted has discussed this internally and with our contractor, Power Engineers, who had oversight of parking lot restoration scope. Ørsted stands by its commitments and easement responsibilities to restore the parking lot to its original condition, including site drainage if as needed. Please advise us as to next steps. This is the meeting you just talked about, and that's signed. And Mikkel, I believe, is one of the very top people in Service Director of North America, one of the top 4 people. And Brian, we really appreciate Ørsted supplying that and continuing to work on that. So I think from the south parking lot discussion, that was one of the big follow-ups, Marianne. And then the other question was a little bit about north parking lot and what's going on. And I think Sam, do you want to talk a little bit just about plantings and how it was really restored back to the original size, or And if you do, could you stand up at the microphone and just make sure it's on, which could be the button on top.
That on?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll be real brief. There seemed to be some confusion at the last meeting about what restoration had been done. Putting the drainage issue aside, but just the physical reconstruction of the north parking lot in terms of the guardrails and the plantings and all that was there. There seemed to be some confusion. I went out and verified it again today and verified it with the survey that was done prior to the work starting. And all the guardrails have been reconstructed within 3 or 4 inches of where they were before. I think there might be some optical illusions going by, or people can't remember exactly what it looked like before, but everything is right where it was. The plantings seem to be taking hold. They seem to be doing pretty well because we had a nice wet summer. So I'm pretty pleased with the way that whole lot went back together again. The guardrails that were there were in pretty tough shape and they're now new. So
If I can, and anybody else jump in, but in absolute respect to Martha, and she couldn't be here for this conflict, I think it just wants to make sure there's as much parking as possible and just make sure that it was really aligned with what the town expectations and quote unquote contracts were. And what I just gathered from you is National Grid and or whoever subcontractors met the town specs. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it did. So the parking spaces that are available are equal to what we had prior.
Okay, and then I know this is not quite in scope nor what Martha did, but if there's a way that the snow fencing is laying down on those bushes every single day, maybe that's something that they can work on. But that's a different subject. So.
They keep standing it up and it keeps falling over. So.
Not for Sam, but thank you, Sam. I just wanted to say thank you to Mary Ann, to Brian, to the folks from National Grid you've been dealing with, et cetera, et al. I know this was a fire drill this week, but really, really appreciate the work. It made me much more comfortable. I appreciate Orsted stepping up and making clear their position. So thank you.
Mark, any questions?
No, my only concern was that south lot, and just going over in my head last week. I've always taught when you borrow something, use something of someone else's, you return it in as good a shape, if not better. So now with this letter, that assures me of that it will be restored the way we want it as a finished product.
And I will say in reply last meeting, Mark, you said you really want National Grid to be here and Orsted. I think it's great that Brian was here. I believe National Grid is on the phone. On Zoom. Oh. Do you want to maybe have them introduce themselves and if they have anything to add right now before we get into any other subjects or not yet?
Mr. Murphy, are you able to hear
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
And we can hear you too.
There you go. So we can do introductions if that's helpful.
Yeah, Mr. Murphy or others on the phone, you may want to put it away from your mouth a little bit because we're just hearing it quite loudly. To Keith's point and to Mark's point, I think we appreciate it. I will say that, I think the questions from the last meeting have been really addressed and answered, though. Thank you. Over the last week, though, there's also been some things that have been discovered, and I really want to raise them up as far as key topics. And as a small community, we really represent the community, and I think we need to have a little discussion as to a couple of things prior to getting into the approval of the easement. One, and I'm not sure who at National Grid to address this to, but I'll address it to all four. I know there were some discussions along the way regarding I guess JT Cleary's crew that was here and some damage that was done to a property. There was also some discussions regarding a letter that Mr. William Rose had to pay to get done to demonstrate the soils were clear and cleaned. And I would like to get any feedback for those. I think one was $1,500 and one was $1,200. And then there was a discussion that I've had over the last few days regarding the berm, and that'll probably come up in a minute. But which of the four of you can help me figure out a way that we can get some of the past due invoices for both Mr. Reeves and Mr. Rose addressed and fully answered, whether it's full payment or an understanding of the next steps.
Yeah, so we can certainly address one of the ones that we've been made aware of prior in having discussions with both Mary Ann and Sam. How's the volume? Is it okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great. And I think that was the $1,200 item that was related to some damage at one of the rental properties. I just don't know for sure if that's the correct one that we're talking about.
I believe it's 1,500, but here's maybe let me rephrase my question. We can try and answer it now, but I don't think we need to. I guess what I would like on those two issues, we're going to meet in a week, and I would love you and Town Manager Mary Ann to address both of these issues, the $1,200 to Mr. Rose, thank you. And that regarded a letter that had to be proven per the contract for the cleanliness of the materials. And then the damages to Mr. Reeves's house, which I believe was at $1,500. And if you in the next week can work this out with Town Manager Marion Crawford, that would be great. I'd rather not get into all the details here unless we need to. Keith, you want to talk about it? Is that okay?
Sure. That's certainly fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
In a similar vein, but a much larger number, we have tipping fees for Block Island Recycling Management that are outstanding. And we would appreciate it if you guys and Mary Ann and Sean McGarry would get together over the next week and work out any issues with deficiencies in invoices that you're receiving, and please settle that up.
Yeah, and we've had some activity over the last 24 hours to try to get information on that, and we've I think we've advanced those discussions. But yes, we can continue those discussions over the next week to follow the path that's been laid out, for sure.
And this is Sven. Thank you, Keith. I really want to further emphasize the importance of this. There are going to be other easements coming up. There are going to be other things coming up. I think that between Mr. McGarry, Mary Ann, Sam, whoever needs to be here in those meetings, we take this very, very seriously. We know that you have many projects going on. We know that you have many things going on. This is very central to the island. This is very central to our contractors and our partners, Burn being one of them. And we consider this to be an island issue, not just a contract issue with one person. And we hope you hear that and you understand the significance of the statement, because in a week, we really hope that there's clearly progress and hopefully solution and resolution. There better be, so that we can all continue to work together.
Understood.
Sorry?
Understood.
Thank you. Mark, anything?
No, so how are we going to proceed with that understanding now? Because they want to start October 1st.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, let me, just before we go into that, does anybody from the audience, Sean and McGarry is here, other people, Brian, I don't want to, I'm going to make sure there's a voice and open time for you to speak up if you'd like to. And come to the mic if you want, definitely.
Thank you for your support, Sven. I have been in contact with National Grid over the past 24, 36 hours. We're working in a direction to resolving those issues. I don't know if it's going to be resolved. You know, I'm always hopeful. As long as they're at the table, that's better than when they weren't at the table. So thank you for supporting us, and I'll continue to work with them and Mary Ann, and hopefully we can resolve it. Thank you.
So Mark, my suggestion, well, again, three of us. So my suggestion would be that I think for timing and based on discussions with the town manager, I'm fine to approve this easement right now. To be very blunt, I was ready to increase it by the 1,200 to 1,500 and possibly the berm. But I'm fine to do that and then have the resolve of the week meeting in a week. But that's just my point of view. I'm sorry if you want to make comment. Otherwise, there's somebody else in the audience who wants to speak.
No one, let that sink in.
Okay. Any other people? Sorry.
Rosemary Ives, Mohegan Trail. First of all, I want to thank the administration for getting the appraisal by Mr. Valentine that was done in 2020 online. It was certainly very interesting and informative, and sort of interesting to read his perspective and his evaluation of our world-class beach and the $820,000 easement value that he placed, and how he went through all of it for both permanent and temporary easements. Although I saw in last week's packet the square thing that adds up to $26,000, I find that amount really insulting. You know, of course, I'm disappointed that the town has not seen to make sure that we are, quote, richer for the experience, or at least be remunerated for the last 4 years when the public, and I have many friends who are year-round residents who were limited from having access to the beach. And that's, you know, during the winter months, people actually do get a lot of psychological help, never mind physical, by walking on the beach. So I'm really disappointed, and I don't want to argue that number, but I think you're missing a number of digits for the inconvenience, because, you know, I've followed this project for more than 10 years now, and we've now on the fourth town manager. It's sort of hard to keep track of things. People come and go. And one of the things, you know, I think you should be asking for more money on this, definitely. And I think Mr. Valentine has given you substantiation. I don't know where the funny math came from on the 26,000, but I think it is, as an aside, another thing that all the council members who have fiduciary responsibility is to actually see a spreadsheet of all the money over the years. You know, at one point there was a promise of 300,000, which I believe was paid. Then in one of the documents that I read last year, Orsted paid $337,000. I mean, there's all these little pieces of money, the penalties that were put on for extra days. I think you really should have a spreadsheet that shows, because I faintly remember that that money that came in was supposed to go into an earmarked fund as well. I can't swear, I can't go to clerk base, but I think it would be really good for you at a minimum to have that available. And I certainly would be interested to say, after 4 or 5 years of this construction, what at least were the dollars and cents? So I would appreciate that.
Mary Ann, thoughts on that? I mean, I think it's a great, first of all, thank you on both the major points. One was on the level and two was on the sort of total encompassing and tracking. I think, thank you for both comments, and we really appreciate it. On the second one, I'm really, we can all say we want more money and we'll talk about that in a minute, but on the tracking, the logging, I don't even know if it's been done or not been done. It's a great question and we should know that. And so I appreciate that.
So I'll be more than happy to reach out to finance department. I'm sure they have all those figures and it's all taken care of. And I'll provide it to the council at the next meeting.
Yeah, maybe at that Wednesday meeting, or assuming it's happening Wednesday, we can try and do that. Just to get an idea of scope and scale. I think it's a great comment.
This goes along with it. And, you know, as a former elected official, I can't let this pass. I have never, ever seen a community where minutes of the council's meetings aren't available at the next regular meeting. And, you know, we go for months here without the public having access to reading what you deliberated on. I think it's really time, you know, in the spirit of transparency, which we all of us have that roll off our lips, but I hope that with the new town management leadership, that this business of waiting a month or 2 months for your minutes is really unacceptable. So,
And thank you for that. I know it's been worked on and it's getting better. The one thing I will say, not to scream, the one thing I will say that's very nice is that you can watch YouTube pretty much the next day, which I know that means you have to watch the whole meeting. But at least then you actually see all the comments, so it's not just minutes. But that was a big plus. And actually, I know many people, including some people in the room here, actually watched that because they couldn't be at the meeting. And it helped even get Orsted letters, for example. So I think we're trying to get there. Very good point, and we'll get better.
what's important though is that the written word is what is embedded in the history of the
Absolutely.
town.
Yep.
So the written word is very, very important to local government.
Yep. Don't you agree? Any other comments? Mark, you were thinking about the easement.
Yeah, I have a gut feeling that the money is short too, but I have to take the information I have in front of me and go with it. I do remember 5 years ago when we were discussing this, when I was on council last, and it was even before they were starting to be constructed, and there was a request for an easement there too. And we came back with a majority on council of a pretty high number. And I think it caught the representatives off guard. And it was kind of, all I can say is the net result was they didn't accept our high number, but they got the job done a lot faster to avoid that high number. So this would probably be the first and only chance I'm going to give these groups to do as they say, and afterwards probably spend more time on investigating a higher number and a strict schedule of events when they'll be done. So I'm open-minded about saying yes today, but God, it goes against me because when liquor licenses come before us, we have this long menu of things they must comply with before we give it to it. And I want to make sure that something like that is in place here before we give it even conditionally.
So I get all that, you know, where I've been on this. I think you have to come from a perspective of assuming good faith. You know, we've got a very clear statement from National Grid that they're going to work on these things. We have Brian, who we have who we've trusted for years, who went to his senior management and got a very clear letter about Orsted's intentions. I'm prepared to accept that. And you know, I guess I'll be held accountable for it if it, you know, if it doesn't come through. But if you know, I mean, I also would like to have this damn thing finished.
Yeah.
That's my prevailing philosophical position is I'd like the damn thing finished. So I think we very clearly made our point last week, and
But I agree with you. I would like to very clearly, and I know there are 4 people from National Grid on the phone, and we greatly appreciate it. I would like to very clearly state, though, that I know the town manager has gone through and detailed how we got to the assessment, or how we got to the easement level. That's fine. We talked about it the last meeting. But if there happens to be another easement, or if there happens to be more work, it's going to be a further long discussion. And front and center in any of that contract or those easements will be, you must pay your vendors on time, because little guys waiting 90 days to get paid, or 120 days, or not at all, is just not really fair. And at least yeah, well, I think we understand the point. I make a motion. Molly, do we need special wording here? I make a motion to approve the National Grid easement for the Town Beach property. Is that okay with you, Molly? Second. Seconded by Keith for discussion of the council. Mark, any thoughts? What you have to say?
Thank you for coming here physically and via Zoom. And in the future, it would go a lot quicker if you were here in the initial meeting and not warranting a second or third meeting.
Okay, with that said, Keith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mark, how do you vote? I vote in the affirmative, 3-0. We appreciate everybody's time and effort, and the motion carries. Sean, we will work in the next week. For other people that were mentioned, we will work in the next week. And Marianne, we really appreciate, and National Grid, we really appreciate you helping us with all these. We understand JT Cleary and other companies may, as subcontractors, but we appreciate you taking the responsibility, as well as Orsted. So with that, I make a motion to head to the Chamber of Commerce meeting. No, sorry, to close the meeting. Second by Mark. Keith?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Sven, yes. We close the meeting and we appreciate it, and it's a beautiful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much, National Grid.